Hi. Today, the topic is driving. It's a little bit ironic that I'm choosing today to talk about my driving experiences because, as you may have noticed, I'm not in my car like usual. Usually, when I talk to you, I'm driving my car. But today, I am visiting a friend. And so, I'm recording this in my friend's house because my car is parked a couple of blocks away and it's raining outside. So I don't want to walk to my car in the rain. I'm going to talk about my experience driving, starting from the time I got my driver's license or was preparing to get my driver's license, all the way until now. I grew up in a very small town. In my town, many kids drove vehicles around their family farms when they were 13 or 14 years old, even though technically this was illegal. It wasn't allowed. It was against the law. But I didn't drive a vehicle. I didn't drive a car until I was 16. So I had 3 less years of experience than many of my classmates. At my school, there was a program called Driver's Ed. Driver's Ed is an abbreviation for driver's education. In Driver's Ed, you took classes where you learned all the rules and regulations about driving a car. In order to pass Driver's Ed and to receive your license, there were 2 requirements. First, you had to pass a written test. The written test consisted of different questions about types of signs you might encounter on the road, what you should do if your car gets in an accident, and other types of questions about how to be a defensive, alert driver. The second requirement was that you had to pass a driving exam, a practical exam. The test in my town consisted of driving around the streets, parallel parking, backing in to a parking spot, and knowing how to use your mirrors, stop at the stoplights, and accelerate and decelerate in a way that wasn't jarring. One interesting thing about cars in the United States compared to cars in other countries is that many of the cars in the US are automatic. an automatic car is a car that doesn't have a manual transmission. You don't have to shift the car into gear. So I still don't know how to drive a manual car, even to this day. I've been taught a few times in parking lots how to drive a manual car, so I think if there was an emergency situation, I could maybe do it. Learning how to drive was very difficult for me because there were many details to pay attention to. I remember I was so sad because I failed my driving test. I passed the written test, but I failed my driving test, and I had to retest. I had to retake the exam. After I had my driver's license, much of my early driving experience was in a small town with only one stoplight and one main street. And the rest of my driving experience was on highways. Highways are roads in between towns or cities where there's usually not as much traffic and you drive at higher speeds. In the US, usually on highways, you drive at a speed of around 55 to 80 miles per hour. I think this is something like 100 kilometers to 130 kilometers per hour. Actually, I don't know. Much of my driving experience was on highways, and so the first time I ever had to drive in a city was very nerve-wracking for me. It was very scary. I drove through Salt Lake City, and there were multiple lanes of traffic. I cried because I thought I was going to get in a crash. I thought my car was going to get in an accident, but I didn't. When I lived in California, I got a lot more experience driving in traffic. And eventually, we moved to Pittsburgh, where I live now. The roads in Pittsburgh are crazy because there are over 400 bridges in Pittsburgh. And so, if you miss the turn that you're supposed to take, you can end up driving over a bridge and getting very lost. Also, a lot of the roads in Pittsburgh aren't rectangular. They aren't straight intersections. They're curved and they go in weird patterns. Driving in Pittsburgh can be stressful, but now that I know the city, it's a lot easier to navigate. I think that driving is a very important skill because it allows you the freedom to travel to places that you might be interested in going. I remember I thought that I would never master driving. I thought that this wasn't a skill for me. But eventually, with enough practice, I learned how to drive. I'm still not very good at parallel parking, but that's okay. What about you? Do you know how to drive? Do you know how to drive a manual? Or do you use other modes of transportation?